Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Can you hear okay in the back? Okay. If you have any trouble, just wave your arms. I won't see you, but you'll get good aerobic exercise, and that's what we care about. Yeah, it's true. I grew up in Fargo. Anybody been there? Seen the movie? Okay. Every day of my life, my dad was in the cattle business. And my grandpa and my great-grand, as far back as I could trace, everybody raised cattle. And my father did not like raising cattle, so he left and went to medical school. And he spent his life treating diabetes in Fargo. And we ate very much like we were in the cattle business still, meaning every day it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and corn, except for special occasions when it was roast beef, baked potatoes, and peas. And I never once heard my father say that a patient was cured of their diabetes, or even did especially well. It was sort of this downward trail, and that was my view of diabetes when I entered my own medical training and when I got out. But I want to show you a different way, and some research studies that we've been doing which are very exciting. And it starts with a lesson from Japan. The patient comes into your office and they say, I got diabetes and I know what to do. I read a book that said, don't eat bread. Because, here's what they're thinking. They're thinking, diabetes means you got too much sugar in your blood. Sugar comes from carbohydrates, so carbohydrates means bread and potatoes and sweet potatoes and beans and rice. But if you look at Japan, you see the skinniest, longest lived people on the planet. And what's the dietary staple in Japan? Huge amounts of rice. Morning, dinner, all kinds of day they're eating rice. And if you look at diabetes prevalence in Japan, in adults over 40 years of age, before 1980, diabetes was rare. It was 1 to 5%. What happened in Japan right around 1980 culturally? When you see the Golden Arches, you might be on the road to the pearly gates. At least that's what it showed in Japan. This is not traditional Japanese food, but this has become very popular. And the fat, did you see this? The fat content of the Japanese diet, not as bad as ours, but it's been going up and up and up. And carbohydrate has been going down. They are eating less and less rice. But if you look at what's happened, the men are getting heavier. This is the prevalence of overweight. Now, we're not seeing that change with women so much. For cultural reasons, women are not out of the home so much, and the westernization has not really affected them to the degree it has men. But among men, fattier diets, more weight gain, what's going to happen to diabetes? By 1990, it was 11 to 12%. This shows us two really important things. The first thing is rice does not cause diabetes. You with me? Secondly, diabetes is not primarily a genetic disease. There are genes for diabetes, but genes are not destiny. There are some genes, like the genes for eye color. They are dictators. They give orders. You are going to have blue eyes. The genes for diabetes are more like committees. They make a suggestion. Maybe you could get diabetes, and you can fight back with them, okay? So let's take a lesson from the United States. We do not have a rice-based diet. We have a meat-based diet. Meat's at the center of everybody's plate. And back in 1909, the Department of Agriculture started tracking how much food we eat. And in 1909, the average American ate 123.9 pounds of meat. And starting in the post-World War II period, it went up. And it went up, 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 up. And we hit an all-time high in 2004 of 201.5 pounds of meat. That's one person per year. By the way, what was the big increase? Were we eating more and more beef? Chicken? Chicken, you got it. Americans eat 1 million chickens per hour. That's healthy. 1 million chickens per hour. It's about 10 billion per year. That's healthy, isn't it? Isn't that fat-free? I hate to disappoint you. You take the skin off, that skinless chicken breast is about 1/4 fat as a percentage of its calories. You'll see what I mean. Let me say a special word of condemnation for cheese. Back 100 years ago, cheese was a European thing. In a year, we didn't get through even 4 pounds of cheese. That was not our thing. But what happened? Starting in the 60s and 70s, fast food chains came in, and cheese became part of every sandwich, and then pizza. Pizza is the delivery vehicle for cheese, and that would not matter except that it's 70% fat, 70, and it's mostly saturated fat. It's also high in cholesterol and high in sodium. If cheese were any worse, it would be Vaseline. And we are in love with this stuff when we put it all over everything, thinking, that's all right for us, isn't it? Okay, all right. Now let's talk about sugar. Sugar in our diet is falling. That is the blue line. That's cane sugar and beet sugar. But we are more than making up for it with high fructose corn syrup. That's the green line. And you put that all together, you get the red line, and what's happening? It's going up. Okay, so with the average American, we're eating about 70, 75 pounds more meat every person every year, 30 pounds more cheese, 30, 40, 50 pounds more sugar. So why do we have an obesity epidemic? I don't know. We're just not exercising enough. No, that has nothing to do with it. And when your patients say, I guess the reason I gained 20 pounds is I'm just not as physically active as I was before, physical activity is a good idea. It has many benefits. You should always encourage your patient to do it. But it is not the issue in weight. And if you don't believe that, go to the gym, get on the treadmill, run flat out for a mile and wipe your sweaty brow and punch the little button that tells you how many calories you just burned. It's about 100. And if you have a soda on the way out, it could be a Dr. Pepper, that's the medical drink. But when you go out, that's got 250 calories in that one soda. So obesity is on the input side of the equation. You cannot exercise all those calories off. Okay? Exercise is good. It's not the answer. All right? This is the diabetes map. Okay. There's Fargo, where I grew up, and back in 1994, less than 4% of the population had diabetes. There we are in West Virginia, not doing too bad. There's Louisiana, Mississippi in disgrace at 6%. But as our diet was changing, let me show you. Here's 90, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2001. Diabetes doesn't wait. You just bring in the meat and cheese and in it comes. Now I'm going to change the number, change the colors, because now you can identify specific counties now. This is 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009. So the point I'm making, genes are not changing. What is changing is our diet, and diabetes comes right in, and we could turn that around. So who does better? Researchers have looked especially at Seventh-day Adventists, and when I got involved in research, I couldn't understand why Adventists are being studied all the time. And well, I figured it out. The Adventist religion says don't smoke, don't drink alcohol, avoid caffeine, and don't eat meat. And almost all Adventists are good at the first three. They're not smoking, they're not drinking, they're avoiding caffeine, they're very clean, living, health conscious. But some of them eat meat, and some do not. So that sets up a natural experiment where you can compare different diet groups. And in 2009, the American Diabetes Association published these data. You familiar with BMI, right? Body mass index? You with me? Okay. It's your weight adjusted for your height. And a healthy BMI is below what number? Okay, below, we're going to say about 25. So we've got about 61,000 people here. We're splitting them into 5 diet groups. The one on the left, the red bar, those are meat eaters, or they call them non-vegetarians. Their BMI was not below 25. It was 28.8. That's typical for American adults. The next group, semi-vegetarian. They ate meat less than once a week. And they were a little bit thinner. And then the third group, pesco-vegetarian. What's that? Pesco is? Okay, so no meat at all other than fish. They're a little bit thinner. And then here the lacto-ovo. Lacto meaning dairy products. Ovo means eggs. Okay, so no meat, but you're having dairy, eggs, cheese, whatnot. A little bit skinnier. And I always have to tell my research participants that a vegan is not a person from the planet Vegas. It's a vegan diet means no animal products at all. And they happen to be the only group that was actually within the healthy weight range. But this is not why the American Diabetes Association published these data. They wanted to look at diabetes. And when you look at diabetes prevalence, you see the same gradient, only much more severe. So 2.9% in the vegans, that's very impressive. So you might say, well, those vegans, they're probably better educated, they may have better finances, and they may be more physically active. That may all be true. So even when you adjust for the differences in BMI and so forth, even physical activity, you see the vegans have a huge advantage. So my research team in Washington, D.C. decided to test that diet in people who had never done anything like this before. So we brought in a group of women, 64 women. They were all moderately to severely overweight. And we did not say to avoid carbohydrate or to count calories or to limit portions or anything like that. What we asked them to do was two things. First, avoid animal products, so that sticks them in the vegan group. And the second thing is to minimize oils. Now, the reason for that, and this will be on the test, all fats have 9 calories per gram. That's a really important thing to tell your patients. And my mental image of that is you take a thimble, like a sewing thimble. If you fill it 1/3 full with fat, that's a gram. And that's 9 calories. But a gram of carbohydrate has how many calories? Only 4. So all of your carb-avoiding patients need to be focusing on something different. So if there's no animal products, there's no animal fat, keep the oils low, it becomes a naturally modest calorie diet. So we asked our patients not to change their exercise patterns, and it was a 14-week study. So here are the kinds of foods we encourage them to eat. Could be blueberry pancakes with butter. No, because that's a dairy product. It's fatty. Okay. But if they wanted to slather maple syrup on it, we didn't stop them. If they wanted to have chili, it could not be the meat chili, but it could be the bean chili or the chunky vegetable chili. And when their linguine arrived at a restaurant, they might top it with artichoke hearts and seared oyster mushrooms, but not the meat sauce, whatever. Okay? So at 14 weeks, the average person had lost 13 pounds, and they lost 2 inches off their waist. And we do glucose tolerance testing, which helps us to understand their insulin sensitivity, and that was measurably improved. So, by the way, I got to tell you, we always do our nutrition teaching in groups, and I'll show you how we do that in a minute. But week 3 of our study, one of the research participants discovered that Twizzlers are vegan. It's true. You know Twizzlers, these little red licorice twisty things? They're just made of sugary, starchy, artificially colored junk. And I am not saying that all foods that have no animal products in them are healthy. It's good to be a little bit choosy. But even my low-fat vegan Twizzler-fueled participants did well. So we then tracked them for 2 years. The red line was a control group following the National Cholesterol Education Program diet, a chicken and fish kind of diet. They did well for a while, but they put their weight back on. The vegans kept the weight off for 2 years. So NIH, the National Institutes of Health, then funded our team to test this diet for type 2 diabetes. And this is our team. And our intervention was vegan, meaning no animal products, low in fat, and low glycemic index. If you're not familiar with the glycemic index, if I bring in research volunteers, I feed them white bread, their blood sugar will rise pretty quickly. But if I feed them rye bread, it'll rise more gradually, or pumpernickel even more gradually. Or if I feed you pure sugar, your blood sugar will rise. That's high glycemic index. If I feed you beans, it might be the same amount of carbohydrate, but the effect on blood sugar is much more gentle. That's low glycemic index. Okay? So this is not low carb. It's a fairly high carbohydrate diet by American standards, but it's low glycemic index. Lots of beans, healthy foods. Okay? The control group followed the American Diabetes Association diet guidelines from 2003, which were cut calories, limit carbs, try to keep them fairly steady throughout the day. And it was a 22-week study with 1-year follow-up. What we track is hemoglobin A1C. And for anyone who's not familiar with A1C, if I track your blood glucose, your blood sugar, it's going up and down and up and down and up and down hour by hour. But hemoglobin A1C is more stable. And it reflects your blood sugar control over the preceding 3 months or so, okay? Should be below 7 or thereabouts if you got diabetes. So the first thing is we had no dropouts in the first 22 weeks. Everybody, doesn't mean everyone followed the diet perfectly, but they were all still there. At a year and a half, we had 86% in the vegan group and 90% in the ADA group. And I first want to show you an intention to treat analysis. And by that I mean I'm including everybody, regardless of whether they follow the diet, regardless of whether they change their medications or whatever. And their A1Cs to start with were at about 8. And the ADA group had a drop of about 0.6, that's the red line, that's good. And the vegans had a drop of about roughly 1 full point, which is good too. But it's not a significant difference between the two groups. However, there's something wrong with this, which you might have detected already. And that is when you prescribe a diet change, especially a vegan diet, you will discover that about 3 or 4 days later, your telephone rings. And there's a patient calling you at 6:30 in the morning saying, "Doctor, there's something wrong with me." And the patient will say to you, "I woke up this morning. I'm shaking like a leaf. I'm sweating. I feel really nervous for some reason, and my stomach is killing. I want to eat the sofa. I'm so hungry." What is your diagnosis? Hypoglycemia? They got a low blood sugar. Exactly. You explain that to the patient who says, "Doctor, what are you talking about? I got diabetes. I have a high blood sugar." And you say, "I will hold the phone while you test." They get their little meter, they prick their finger, and they go, "Doctor, my blood sugar is 50. This is the one and only time you will tell your patients to go eat junk food. They are now to eat some sugar, drink a Coca-Cola, get their blood sugar back up, and then you want them to test again in 15 minutes and get back up. Low blood sugar is not good for you. The diet didn't do that. What the diet did was get out of the way. Their insulin that they were taking drove their blood sugar down. And as long as they were on a crummy diet before, their blood sugar never went down. But now their insulin or sulfonylureas, they're just too strong for them. The patient thinks that's the greatest thing in the world because now you're going to reduce their dose. And eventually they may get off of it, okay? So what that means is I've got a confounder in my data. So if I'm showing you all the data when people are changing their medicines, you with me? That means I can't trust my A1C data. So now I'm showing you the same data, but I'm limiting it to those people who did not make any medication changes. And here, the average drop in the ADA group is 0.4. That's good, but the average drop in the vegan group is 1.2 or a little bit better, which is enormous. And not only is that better than any other diet, it's better than any oral diabetes medication. To get an average A1C improvement like that, it's huge. So then we track them for another year. And you see some give back, but the vegans still stay better than they started. With regard to body weight, we did not see a significant difference between the two. The thing that's maybe worth noting, though, is the people following ADA guidelines are told to lose weight. A dietitian will say, "Here's your menu. You normally eat 2,000 calories, so this adds up to only 1,500. And the patient will say to you, "Okay, how long do I have to do that for?" And you say you have to do that until you hit your ideal body weight, which for your patients is forever. And the patient will say to you by about Wednesday, "I think I'm done with this." And it's a very challenging way to go. On the vegan diet, you tell them, eat all you want. It's a qualitative shift in foods that they're making, not a quantitative one. But because every bite of a vegetable and a grain and a bean and a fruit has fiber in it, and fiber has effectively no calories, it fills them up faster. And so the energy density of their diet is low. They think they're eating a lot. The truth is they're eating probably 200 calories a day less. Okay? Their metabolism also improves just slightly for reasons I can tell you about later if you want. But the bottom line is it's so much easier to tell your patients to eat spaghetti than to tell them to go to bed hungry. Okay? So they've just got a slight advantage there. It won't surprise you their LDL, low density lipoprotein, it drops because you're not eating animal fat. You're not eating cholesterol. Okay? Just for extra credit, this will not be on the test. My group recently published a meta-analysis of every study that has ever been done on plant-based diets and the effect on hemoglobin A1C. And on a meta-analysis, every line is a different study. And if you are to the left of this 0 line, that means that the diet reduced hemoglobin A1C. And as you can see, they're all to the left of the line. So it's very consistent, really beyond dispute at this point. And the American Diabetes Association now accepts plant-based diets as an effective approach. Oh, this is my most important slide. You can draw this on a napkin for your patients. And because I want to explain why this approach would work. Because your patient is going to be afraid. What do you mean? You told me I can eat rice? And my blood sugar is going to go down? How can that possibly be? What they are thinking is that the rice will release glucose into the blood. Okay, this is a muscle cell. I'm showing you a muscle cell because muscles are your calorie burners, and muscles, that's where glucose wants to go. If you could spot one glucose molecule in your blood, some of it goes to the brain, some goes to the liver, most of it goes into your muscles. But, so there it is, there's the glucose up there, but it cannot get into the cell without the help of a hormone called insulin. There it is. And insulin is like a key. It's like your front door key. It goes into this lock, and once it goes in there, it signals these channels to open up to let the glucose inside. There it goes. Okay. So your patients with type 2 diabetes, they got glucose, they got insulin, they got receptors. There is no problem there. The problem is inside the cell. And what is the problem? I think of it as like when I get home from work. About once every 2 years, the neighbor kids play this trick on me. I take my key out of my pocket, I put it in my front door lock, and it's not working. And the kids put gum in my lock while I was gone. Very funny. And now, what am I going to do? Crawl in and out the window? No, I'm going to clean it out, and then my key will work again. You don't have gum in your cells. What you have is fat in your cells. This is not belly fat. This is this is fat inside the cells, which you can see with MR spectroscopy scanning. So there it is. Chicken fat, beef fat, olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. This is fat building up inside the cell. And by the way, physicians hate words like fat. It has only one syllable. So we can call it intramyocellular lipid, but it's fat inside the cell. And as fat builds up in the cell, either the quantity of fat or the flux of the fat in the cell, it interferes with insulin's ability to signal. Okay? You with me? That's what you need to explain to your patients. So how much animal fat is there in a vegan diet? There isn't any. And if I keep vegetable oils low too, because I'm steaming my broccoli instead of stir-frying them, what do you think happens to this fat? It starts to dissipate. And so insulin starts to work again. And that's something that we never thought we could promise our patients, but that's what will happen, okay? So, by the way, it's not just good for blood glucose control. We published this in JAMA Internal Medicine about a year ago, and don't get blown away by this. Just if you focus on blood pressure, systolic blood pressure in observational studies, if you're to the left of the line, a plant-based diet meant it got better. And as you can see, it's very consistent evidence, things get better. Here are clinical trials. If you're to the left of that line, that means that in a randomized clinical trial, plant-based diet improved your systolic or diastolic blood pressure. You know, very obvious. This led, by the way, to the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, which came out with a report a month or two ago. You might have seen they quoted our study as evidence for why they now recommend vegetarian diets as one of the major healthy diet patterns. So that's now U.S. government. Similar with regard to cholesterol. If you're to the left of this line, that means that a plant-based diet lowers your total cholesterol, which is green, your LDL, which is sort of brownish, or your HDL, which is blue. And as you can see, plant-based diets have a very consistent cholesterol-lowering effect, except with regard to HDL, where it kind of holds it about even. And so that means that your ratio of total to HDL is going to get better. Good way to go, okay? All right. And this, we just published this one on body weight. And here's the zero line over here. This was published in the Journal of the the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And every study is to the left of this zero line here, meaning every single study shows weight loss. All right, let me show you what this is like for a human being. This is Vance. Came into one of our research studies. Vance's father was dead by age 30. Vance was 31 when he was diagnosed with diabetes. He came in to see us when he was in his late 30s. And over about a year, he lost 60 pounds on simply plant-based diet. He stopped his diabetes medications. His A1C was 9.5 to start. It fell to 5.3, which this, by the way, this was 2005. And I had a real problem with this because I don't know if you were, I was trained, you can't ever tell a patient their diabetes is gone. Once you have diabetes, you'll always have diabetes. And here I've got a guy who's on no medications, and that is a totally normal A1C level. We started getting more comfortable after we had seen a lot of patients have this effect. We became more comfortable telling people their diabetes is no longer detectable. But at first, this was kind of troubling for us. So he felt a lot better. Oh, and by the way, I asked his permission to tell you about his story. He said, make sure you tell all those students that my erectile dysfunction went away too. So that'll be on your boards. This is Nancy. Nancy had a similar experience. She went on a plant-based diet, lost about 40 pounds. She stopped her medications. Her A1C did not get into the normal range, but it improved quite a lot, even while she stopped all of her medications. And she had a funny experience where her arthritis improved dramatically. And if any of you are interested in this, I wrote a book a long time ago called Foods That Fight Pain. Because I saw a lot of people have their migraines, their arthritis, their fibromyalgia, their menstrual cramps change based on the foods that they ate. And it's very empowering. And just a quick hint, she stopped dairy products as part of her vegan diet. And for many people, that's their pain trigger. Although there's more to it than that. But that was, I think, the real issue for her. Okay? This is a man named Jean Remy. He sent me these pictures from Canada because he was at 320 pounds. And his doctor said, you've got pre-diabetes. We know where this is going. And his wife happened to see a book that I wrote that described our research and how we did it. And so she encouraged him to try a plant-based diet, eat as much as he wanted, but it was all grains, beans, vegetables, fruits, healthy foods. And by the time he got to chapter 4 of my book, he lost 160 pounds. And he had an experience that a lot of people have, which is that you suddenly feel like you have energy, which you haven't had in a long time. And so he became kind of a exercise enthusiast. This is Jenna, same story, wanted to lose some weight, and did not do it by starving or avoiding rice and bread. She just went on a plant-based diet, and she got her waistline back and her confidence back, and I guess more importantly, she got her health back. Okay, so there are 3 keys for people with diabetes. The first is we use a plant-based diet, and it's also low in fats and oils. For your patients, that's probably all you need to do. I also like going low glycemic index, especially for people where blood sugar is an issue or where triglycerides are an issue. You got a patient with high triglycerides, use all 3, okay? And so we use the power plate, fruits, grains, vegetables, legumes. What are legumes? Beans, peas, lentils, okay? Healthy food. We sent this to the USDA in 2009. And we said the pyramid's a nice shape. But people eat off a plate. Give them a plate and get rid of that darn meat group. You don't need a meat group. You don't need a dairy group. People who avoid those foods are healthier than people who do. And did you see what the USDA came out with in 2011? I'm taking no credit for this, but it does look similar to what we sent them 2 years earlier. There is no meat group anymore in federal diet guidelines. There's a protein group which could be meat, but it could be beans. It could be tofu, it could be nuts, it could be any high protein food. There's a dairy group, but soy milk counts. So we're making progress. Things are getting better. By the way, for all your patients who say, but how about that chicken? The leanest beef, about 29% fat as a percentage of calories. Leanest chicken, about 23. Now fish, some are lower, some are higher. And your patients will say, but you need fish because it's got those omega-3s. And that's true. There are omega-3s in fish. But your disappointed patient is about to learn that most of the fat in fish is not omega-3. That big salmon fillet, it's 40% fat. If it's Chinook salmon, it's 50% fat, and only a tiny percentage of it is omega-3. And all the rest, and this is a fatty fish. This is a sponge filled with grease. That is going to enter their cells and make their diabetes worse, which is, remember the Adventists? The pesco-vegetarians didn't do anywhere near as good as the vegans because they got a big source of fat getting into their cells, causing problems, padding their waist and padding their thighs and making them heavy. And if your patients are big enthusiasts for oily fish, that's going to be a person struggling with their weight. And they're going to say, maybe I should stop eating carbs. And maybe I should just exercise more. And they're going to give you just give them a plant-based diet for a while. And you'll see, okay? All right. So all of these healthy plant-based foods are completely different. Low in fat, zero cholesterol, naturally low in sodium, very high in fiber, completely different world compared to the animal-based foods. All right? Now I'd like to talk to you about your car insurance. Geico has its national headquarters about 4 blocks from my office. And back in 2006, I was talking to their health director. And she said, Dr. Barnard, we need to do your diet here at work because I got 2,500 people here. And every single Lipitor prescription, and every metformin prescription, every trip to the hospital, every trip to the emergency room was costing us a boatload of dough. So I said, fine, let's do it as, I'm very big on evidence. So I said, let's do it, but let's do it as a research study. And we picked a second site in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And in both of these facilities, this one in the Washington, D.C. area, and the other in Fredericksburg, we tracked their weight, their A1C, their lipids, their blood pressure. But in this one, they got a program. The program was a weekly group at lunchtime for an hour where we would support them in making a diet. Anybody who wanted to go vegan was free to come. And we would give them recipes and little cooking instruction and some support. And the second thing they got was vegan food in the cafeteria. And I want to tell you, the cafeteria manager, this was kind of a new thing for him. So there were a few awkward moments along the way. But anyway, they figured it out. And as time went on, the people in Fredericksburg didn't lose any weight. But the people here in the D.C. area lost weight very, very nicely, and their waist circumference fell very, very well. And so then Geico said, well, hey, we've got a lot of other cities that we could test this in. So we did it again. San Diego, Macon, Georgia, Lakeland, Florida, Buffalo, New York. And but by this point, it's like very predictable. The people lost weight, their A1C gets better. It just happens, okay? And every week, my instructors, we have conference calls from around the country. And I would hear how great the Geico people were. These employees are so motivated. They're having a great time, except for 2 of them. There's Hillary and Bruce. They come every week, and they talk constantly. They sit in the back of the room, and they're distracting everybody. They're passing notes back and forth. Why are they even coming? Well, you know, you can misjudge people. Our people, we misjudged Hillary, and they did talk a lot. But what they were talking about was what foods they were going to pick up at the store to make the recipes they were learning about, and how they would convince her parents to go vegan with them, and how they could construct a Thanksgiving menu that was 100% plant-based for all their friends. They were totally into this, and a year later, Bruce sent me this picture. Hillary has lost 85 pounds. Bruce has lost 100 pounds. And he sent me this picture because not only does this have a physical effect, but once you finally succeed, it makes you feel like you can succeed at other things in your life. And one of those things was these 2 people never exercised at all. These 2 people had energy, and he snapped this picture the day they ran their first half marathon. So, very good thing. All right, I mentioned this earlier, the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. Back in the year 2000, our organization, the Physicians Committee, sued the USDA because 6 of the 11 members of the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee that decides what every kid eats in school, what's part of every food assistance program, 6 of the 11 members of the committee had economic ties to the dairy industry, the meat industry, or the egg industry. We filed lawsuit, and they had several attorneys on their side. We had one, but it helps when you are right. And the judge ruled in our favor, and that forced open the process by which these guidelines are developed. And now it's very evidence-based. They are still pushed by industry a lot, But this year they came out and said there are 3 healthy dietary patterns. Vegetarian, Mediterranean, which is sort of semi-veg, and healthy US, whatever that means. But anyway, the point I'm making is the world is changing. When I grew up in Fargo, I never heard of anybody trying a vegetarian, vegan diet, or I never heard of that kind of stuff. And when President Clinton did this, 6 or 8 years ago, it seemed kind of far-reaching, but then Al Gore did it too, and lots of people are doing it now. And it has now become an official part of what everybody's talking about, what the government is talking about too. And by the way, did you read the Oklahoma Farm Report? They were scandalized because the Dietary Guidelines Committee said that even lean meat doesn't count anymore. How can you drop lean meat from a healthy diet? Well, there you go. All right, so that's the politics side of things. For all of you who are in training, if we fast forward about 10 years, some of you are going to be unhappy because you're going to be in a clinic where you are expected to see one patient every 15 minutes, and during that period of time, you are going to hand that patient a lot of prescriptions. And your patients are going to love you because you're giving them metformin, and you're giving them Actos when the metformin doesn't work anymore, and when that doesn't work anymore, you're going to show them how to use a needle. They're going to love that, aren't they? They're not going to love that. They're going to be upset, and you're going to be upset. And you're going to think, this is not why I decided to become a doctor. Here's how to make your patients love you. Show them how to do these things, and show them the power that these foods have, and how fun it can be, and not just for them, but for their reluctant spouse, and their kids, and everybody that they know. Because now you're turning the power not to the pharmacy, but into their house. And don't get me wrong, they're going to have some trouble, they're going to have issues, they're going to have questions, all that will happen. But you've gotten them on a good path, and I'm going to show you how. First of all, we don't get trained this very well. This is a survey of medical residents published a number of years ago. Doctors feel unqualified to provide nutrition information. They feel that nutrition is important, but almost nobody feels qualified. You know that's true. Doctors, like, how am I going to do this? Well, it's not rocket science. Here's how we do it. We have done this with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And I have never seen anyone unable to do it. The way we encourage people to begin a plant-based diet is we break it into 2 steps. And the first step is you invite the patient to just check out the possibilities. We do this as a group. So you say to the patients, don't make any diet changes now. We're going to take a week. And you give the patient a piece of paper. You say, come back next week and fill in on this paper breakfast and lunches and dinners and snacks that are plant-based. What the heck does that mean? It means no animal products, keep the oils low. So you give them some suggestions. And the patient will say, oatmeal, that tastes like paste. Well, put some cinnamon on it, put some raisins, put some sliced strawberries. Okay, fine. Blueberry pancakes, now you're talking. Bran flakes with almond milk, your patients have all tasted that now, and they all think that's pretty good. They haven't tried the veggie sausage or veggie bacon, but if they don't like it, leave it off. So the whole idea is give them a week to just try foods and write them down on their list if they like them. And then if they never had the pizza without the cheese, or the bean burrito, or the veggie hot dog, they're going to try that too. And when they go to an Italian restaurant, the idea is to see what's on the menu that they'll enjoy. And of course, they're more than happy to top your pasta with tomato sauce and wild mushrooms and olives and that kind of thing. And the same is true at a Mexican restaurant. There's veggie fajitas and bean burritos and beans and rice. Chinese, very easy. So if you're eating out, rice dishes, vegetable dishes, tofu dishes. Extra points for Japanese because they not only have a lot of plant-based food items, but they're very, very low in oil usually. So now if your patients are eating at Subway, will Subway give you a sandwich without the meat and cheese? Sure. Just pile on the lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers and spinach and the olives and the onions and a little red wine vinegar and toast it, and they'll call it Veggie Delight. And now Taco Bell may not be the pinnacle of culinary art, but they're happy to throw out the meat taco and give you the bean burrito, and you hold the cheese. Okay, all right. So the patient comes back. After a week, and they say, I got my list. This is not so hard. Now what do I do with it? And now we're going to do a 3-week test drive. 21 days, we're going to do it all vegan all the time. Well, that's not hard because I know what I like already. And at the end of 3 weeks, 2 things will have happened. The first is the patients are healthier. They're losing weight. Their blood sugar is coming down. You've already had 2 or 3 hypoglycemia calls from your diabetes patients. Their blood pressure is coming down. Their joints are feeling better. Their digestion is better. But the second thing is, beyond the physical changes, their tastes are starting to change, and they didn't expect this, and you didn't tell them. Let me ask this group. How many of you ever switched from whole milk to skim milk or some kind of low-fat, non-fat milk? Let me see hands. Okay, when you did, what was the skim milk like at the beginning? Watery? Kind of blue, doesn't look right. How many of you got used to that lower fat taste? Okay, did you ever go back and taste whole milk again? What was that like? It's thick, right? It's kind of creamy. Well, wait a minute, for your whole life, it was okay. But once you got away from it for about 3 weeks, your taste buds physically change, and they no longer want that fatty taste. And you know that for the rest of your life, you're just past that. The first week on a vegan diet, it will seem light. You'll think to yourself, do I have to acquire a taste for folk music now? Okay. The second week, it starts to seem normal. You discover there are a lot of really good foods, and you discover there are a lot of other people doing it. After 3 weeks or 4 weeks, if you went back and had a double bacon cheeseburger, you would discover it's not the joyful experience that you remembered. And you found so many other things, and you just got, you're on a better path. But the idea is not to burden yourself with the idea of what I'm going to do forever and ever. Just we're trying this short term, and we're realizing that if I can knock out diabetes or high blood pressure, just by these diet changes, we're talking about something really powerful. We offer a once-a-week class, and I'm going to show you how we do this. The way we do a class, I never do diet teaching one-on-one, and you aren't going to have the time to do it. You only need 7 minutes with a diabetes patient. You say your A1C is 10.3, come here on Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Then you have a dietitian, a nurse, it could be you, or a health coach, teach the class. Have 10 to 20 participants. It can be any number, but if it's too few, they really feel like you're looking at them. If it's too many, they get lost. And you can mix diagnoses. You can have diabetes, weight problems, lipid problems, anybody, have them come. And we will give you a curriculum for free at pcrm.org. Okay, extremely efficient. You got 20 people, 1 person for an hour, very easy. Okay, here's how we run the class. The patients come into the room, they come into your clinic. And you can use a normal clinic waiting room, just put the chairs in a circle. As they come in, ask somebody to weigh them privately, and I like to have a female staffer do the weighing. Call me sexist, but my belief is that a lot of women patients don't like a guy looking over their shoulder at how much they weigh. So have them weighed and have them track it each week. If they don't lose weight on a given week, for 1 week you'll say okay. If it's 2 weeks, there's a problem, and you've got to look at what they're eating. And I guarantee you some fatty food has crept in, okay? So then for the first half hour, go around the room and say, Hank, how are you doing? And they will talk about their successes and their challenges. I lost 2 pounds this week, but I got a problem. I got to go to a wedding on Saturday, and I don't know what I'm going to eat at the reception. Okay, the other group member starts problem solving. Okay, I'm going to be traveling. What am I going to do? My husband won't eat this way. Whatever. You go around the room and you problem solve. That takes a half hour. Then the next half hour is education, where I'll show a video or show a PowerPoint or do a little cooking demonstration or whatever. That keeps them entertained, keeps them learning, and they want to come back week after week after week. They support each other. Your job becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, but keep them coming. And you can sometimes contract that if they don't show up, somebody calls them, because a lot of your patients will say, I want structure. They may say they don't, they really do. And that's really going to help them. We have materials for you. Here's the nutrition guide for clinicians, which I hope all the medical students got a copy of. If you didn't, we'll give it to you for free. This is part of my bankruptcy plan. For people in practice, go to Nutrition CME. I've got about 50 modules for free. Continuing medical education for you all about nutrition. We have an online Kickstart program, pcrm.org. It's 3 weeks of emails with menus, recipes, cooking videos, all for free. We have an app, also for free, 21-day Kickstart. And it's in English, it's in Spanish, it's in Mandarin. We have one for people from India with Indian ingredients, Indian food. It's in Japanese now also. And please come to Washington. July 31st, August 1st, the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, sponsored by the Physicians Committee and the George Washington University. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about the origins of cardiovascular disease in childhood, continuing education credits for doctors, nurses, PAs. Anyway, please do come. The last thing is we have constructed a new medical center in our offices in Washington. And we would love to have students or physicians come spend time with us. And you can rotate through. We're starting in November, so that's a little ways off. But come on, see us. We'd love to have you come and see how we do things. So the last thing that I just want to say is I hope you found this information useful. However, the people who need this information the most are not in this room. The people who really need this information are, to tell you the truth, they're 12 years old, and they're in school thinking it's normal to eat chicken nuggets and pepperoni pizza every day, and on the way home, they stop at the store and get M&Ms and sodas, and at night, they turn on the TV, and then they're eating pizza, again, around the TV, and half the commercials are for snack foods. And it's burgers piled high, and the other half of the commercials are for medication to undo the effects of the snack foods. And your 7-year-old daughter will say, "What's an erection lasting more than 4 hours?" And they think that's normal. I want to be like those people with diabetes. They're having a blast on TV. We got to change this. We can change this. And I'm optimistic because when I was early in my practice at the George Washington University, we made a decision to ban smoking. And this was, I got to tell you, this was very controversial. Can we ban smoking from the doctor's lounge? Everywhere in the hospital? And we did. And every hospital has banned smoking. Now, I smoked myself. I had a terrible diet and all the, we weren't idiots. We knew we had to quit, but we also knew we were under stress. And it takes time to get cancer, so I'll stop eventually. That was the way, that was fairly routine. Those of you who are old enough to remember, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, we finally realized, enough. Deal with this. And every hospital in America has banned smoking, and every airline and virtually every restaurant. And we have won that battle. Today, we're at the same place with food. We know we got a problem. But there's a lot of noise out there. Should I go low carb? Should I do this? Should I do that? Da, 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 da. When you give your body the foods that it really needs, you're going to do well. And so now in Washington, D.C., it can be a cold February morning, and there's some guy finishing his cigarette before he's allowed in his non-smoking building. If we are successful by trying these foods ourselves, trying a new book, you might experiment a little bit and have a dud. That's okay. This isn't a moral issue. But we bring these into our lives. We have fun with it. We make some noise. We spread the word. One February morning, there'll be somebody in Washington, D.C., shivering in the cold, finishing his chicken wing before he's allowed in his vegan building, and then that's going to revolutionize the health of this country. Thanks very much.
Thank you.